Okay, so I'm making this video because something really weird has happened. I I'm a product designer, and this is about my um, Ender 3, and so I'll give you a bit of backstory. I once owned a 3D printer. I used to have a MakerBot Thingomatic. Um, it cost me an arm and a leg at the time, and actually it just became obsolete really quickly. And for my work, having that was years ago, and for my work, I actually just use SLS 3D prints, and I've been really reluctant to buy my own 3D printer because really, the main reason I get one is so I could play with it really, and it's a bit of a work distraction because I could convince myself it's useful for what I need to do, and it would be, and it is. But it's far better for me to have something that is of a commercial standard and is very high quality. And commercial SLS 3D prints are incredibly high resolution and pretty inexpensive. So I'm making this video because I've bought an Ender Creality 3 and something really weird happened. So the first thing to admit is I was just trying to print something kind of big and cool that filled up most of the build platform. So I just shoved something on that looked cool. It's a wind turbine, helical wind turbine, someone else's design. I've got a camper van. I thought, hey, maybe I could test it on that, see if it was useful or generate any power. So I thought it was quite a cool thing to do. Download the file, put it on the Ender, and quite late on into the print, I realised I'd done something. I was looking at it and thinking, like, how the hell is that gonna print? And I realised that the file basically didn't have any supports, and it was printing in a way that it wouldn't work. For some reason, I thought, why not? I'm just gonna see what happens. So I left it, and I don't know if you can see. So let's just see if I can get this to. There's a few things you're gonna notice, right? I kid you not, this is how I printed it. I don't know if you can see this here. This is the build platform that should have been, right? It's suspended midair. I don't know if this is something that people who own Enders are familiar with, or is actually not that incredible. But that, with very few strings underneath, you can kind of see some, but effectively that is a solid. You can see I'm just twanging on that. You know, I'm not messing about. That's a self-supporting suspended print that is, to me, just mind-blowing. So that was the final thing that was probably the most interesting, but also this just demonstrates how much of a moron I am, really. Really early on in the print, when it was this way up, I realised that the design, the overhang, the kind of this bit hadn't been printed on the base. It was actually much further up than I'd like to admit, but you can just see the stringing there, and it's pretty bad. But more interesting is that despite that being, I can't really get this to focus too well. Maybe focus on my face and then put it. You can see that actually the density of the layers then becomes really pretty decent, and that part is really good. I'm going to pause it and flip cameras because this is some stupid ass way of doing it. So I had a little go at breaking away some of the scraggly bits of plastic that hadn't, trying to get it, there we go, that hadn't really stuck together very well. So actually, even the bits that aren't, that you can kind of see, even the bits that aren't particularly well bonded together, were quite tricky to remove. I guess it's partly because the space is quite restricted. But anyway, I've taken off a fair old bit. It's not that important, this part of the weirdness of the build. Where the strength is regained is closer to where these legs these legs, where they come into the print and they join with this part here, where the two parts connect, it basically creates a stronger platform that allows this part to start to print again effectively, which in a way demonstrates really what my point was about these bits here. It's being supported by the points between the outside edges or the closest edges of these kind of sprues, I guess you could call them, these struts. So the reason this is able to print again is because of the proximity between this part and this part, and it's creating really a net, a little web between these bits here. So what's interesting is that with this part, with other parts, there's real potential for changing this design, say, and other designs, to allow and accommodate for the print to continue above this point here, which would be in this direction of the print. So it's important just to interject at this point. I'm going on a bit in the video, I'm going on a bit now in general. This only works as a principle if the support structure is made up of straight lines between parts in the file. You can't join bits with a wiggly line. You have to use straight lines from one side to the other. It needs to be under tension, and that's the only way it's feasible. So it can't just print in the air like, well, it has to join points, a bit like a spider web maybe is in the way that they're built. They're built, the spokes are made joining the outside edge to the center initially, and there's a straight line points, and then in a way that's comparable, in a way that's the principle works, you join those spokes up and connect them so you kind of make it more stable. So this idea that I'm describing, you can't simply have elements of the design just join, especially in the case of this print, because they're rounded. Joining rounded bits is quite tricky, but if you were to create a series of straight connections, then it would work. So I'm just interjecting this point I'm making previously to explain that. You can adapt designs to incorporate build platforms higher in the elevation of the print. So the reason I'm interested in this is because, as I said before, I think you can save a lot of material and not waste support material. Yeah, there's a little wispy bit here, I don't know what that's from. That measurement here, the equivalent from usable material, so I haven't included the kind of bad stickiness stuff, the kind of shit layer adhesion bit. I've just done it above that, where there's a slightly denser print layer from where it's denser. That's actually lower than the point where these bits are connected, so the usable effective material is a bit lower. I'm not sure how or why. I guess this rough bit, even though it's shit, makes up an effective platform above it, which is enough to create a surface that's good enough to print on. So yeah, that wasn't really the point, but it's still pretty amazing. Anyway, really interested to see how you guys, what people make of it. Oh, and one more thing. If you may not know the answers, but if you know anyone who might be interested in that as a subject or might have some answers, do share it, because it would be really interesting to get in touch with people who might know how to use that or do something about that. Yeah, so if you think it's going to be interesting to someone, a colleague or someone you know who uses 3D printers, yeah, share the video, send it to them, send them a link. Be interesting to see what people think.